back, I guess, to another episode of SHU Doing. That was probably the greatest pre-show that I think we've ever had and may ever have. So thank you very much. Can I call you your first name here? I feel
of course. Yeah, right. Or you can call my last name is fine. I think with my good friends, last name is more appropriate. Yeah.
All right, Thorne. So, listen.
No, call me Brian. No.
Look, it's Professor Thorne to you, sir.
I'd like you to use my full legal name, please.
Welcome back to another episode of SHU Doing. I am your host alongside my illustrious co-host, Paul Guarino.
Yeah, and I was spelling your name wrong during the emails because we've been,
He's been calling you Thorne all week.
But,
You know what? It happens more often than not.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's
just trying to get the people scheduled,
At this point in time, we should expect a little better. But.
Yeah. Watch the Throne,
The reason I started watching Game of Thrones was simply because I actually thought it said Game of Thorns. I'm not kidding. I looked quick and then I watched an episode and I'm like, oh, I'm in. And then I realized, it's Game of Thrones. Gotcha. Yeah.
Listen, as I said, in our last episode, we have extravagant guests this year. I said elaborate last episode, but I meant extravagant guests. But either way, words aren't necessarily coming to me great right now. But we are here with Professor Brian Thorne. You have birthed many careers through your classes, none the least my own, especially. I've never actually told you this, but your class in undergrad where you were like, I want you to go out there, take the camera, get comfortable, create things. You're like, I don't care what it is, but it has to be shot properly. It needs to be edited correctly. The sound needs to sound good. And I don't know if you remember the things that I would show up with, but I would show up with the most absurd videos I could find because I was just trying to test the limit. I was like, how far can I go with this as long as it's shot well? And you allowed me to spread my creative wings. And now I'm a creative who makes videos online, and I honestly owe that to your classes. No joke, because I fell in love with the process of creating things.
Wow. I'm surprised. I didn't know that. I do remember the things you brought in. It's funny. You always remember. You see so many students, but every year.
What were you bringing in
that stick out? We can't talk about it.
No, they were absurd.
Yeah, I know. It was very avant-garde. No, it was again, and I think I'm going to give that credit again to Jim and Andrew. And when I was a student here, I was pushing so many boundaries with in studio production. I was, what I thought at the time could be funny. Somebody could look at it and say this is tasteless or whatever, but they let me create, right? If I wanted to make a ridiculous TV show in the studio, they let me do it. My senior project was it was a comedy, but they let me do that. And so what was great was this place was always down to let me be creative. As long as the product looked a certain way and it sounded a certain way to show that, I am learning the process here. The content can be whatever it is, but just learn the process. So I'm so happy you said that because it was really the freedom that I was given here as a student. So I didn't even think that maybe that was carrying over.
No, it fully passed on. I loved making those funny videos. I would show them to my friends, quote unquote funny, as you said, show them nowadays, probably not so funny. But, it allowed me to feel like, okay, this is fun. I enjoy the process of being able to get a reaction from friends and stuff. And that's kind of how when I started, I was making different content. Paul and I were making different content as well. We would do the My Why series, all of that social forward content where it was let's push boundaries. All of that came from being able to push boundaries in your class. So this is my moment to say thank you.
Oh my God, I truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's it. We're done.
That's all right.
Yeah. I did it. Paul's like, I didn't like your classes.
Well, I was only here for grad school, for communications, I should say. But so I did business undergrad, but I think I only had one class with you. But I think it was the broadcasting class.
Yeah. The thing is, you're quiet enough that I was like, does this guy hate me? Or does he just, because he's quiet sometimes is a tough read.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if he was like I'm a business person, I don't really like this, or if he was like, I think, Paul, you were here at a time, too, and both you guys, when SCM was just getting off the ground. And again, we still had to work for it. So the studio was built, but the control room wasn't. So we're we're wiring things into the hallway. We're directing from right outside the room. We had to get really creative. And I think that the first 3 years of this program were so important because whenever you start anything new, it's is this going to fly? Is it going to be a success? And, Andrew believed in it. And I think he got the right people, but you're like, all right, now we've built it. will people come, and then will they actually go out and be successful in this industry? So, you guys, I thought, were instrumental. Those first 3 years, I remember everybody in those classes because it really was like, everything's so new.
Yeah. It was cool too because it wasn't just like I think it was like a split probably from like SHU alum to like then people like we had a lot of people that were from like West Coast and stuff, so that was like interesting just to like meet those people too. But the only thing I remember about your class was I remember I only did it one time, and I remember it was terrible, and I had to go up on there and talk or whatever and read the prompter, and I was like, yep, this isn't for me. Be on camera in terms of that type of work, but yeah.
And now you're on camera every week.
Podcasting. Shout out to COVID though, because that's where I really got my reps. Because I was always going. I went Instagram Live for 60 days straight interviewing people. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's such a small world too. Even when I was working Bellator, and I think it was Mikey Kimball. Is that his name, right?
Yeah.
He has like the fastest knockout ever, and then just I'm on social media and I see that you have a connection with this person, and I'm like, this is amazing, like it's such a small industry and a small world that there's so many things like that you get that cool connection, or even if Camilla's talking today, I'm at like national championship game down on the field, she's like, hey, I'm here in the stadium, like I get so jacked up when I see students on the field somewhere, or even through Instagram or Facebook or anything, that you actually see where they are in the world and what they're doing. It really is. You don't take credit for it, but you have this sense of you are so happy for them. Yeah. It's like you don't think of you just think that you've maybe done justice to them. But, so it's like everyone's success is their own success, but you just are so happy for them.
Yeah. I could semi-relate to that because I was actually a substitute teacher while I was in grad school. And it's cool to see, because now I see the kids, I didn't teach, but you know what I mean, was substitute taught for, and I saw them go to college and things like that, so it was, cool.
Oh, yeah, it's that feeling of, I always, if you're, a normal dad watching, your kid play football, you're not, living through your kid, it's one of those things that you're just so happy for them if they're thriving, you're just, You just have this sense of relief, oh, thank God, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're happy for their happiness. You're not oh, that's my boy, I had anything to do with that. But you just get so happy for their success or their happiness. If you can make a living doing what you love, there's nothing better, to
Definitely.
me. Yeah.
Sure.
I was gonna say work never feels like work to me, and that includes here. Coming in here to teach, it never is oh, I got to go to work. It sounds weird, but it's 15 years before I teach a larger class. It's my heart rate increases and I get excited and I'm going through the whole plan and you're laying out 3 hours. You still get excited. If I wasn't excited to be here, I wouldn't be flying across the country and doing all that. So it's still exciting.
I wanted to ask you about something because you talk about work and the excitement of work. You have probably the most impressive credential wall in your office that I have ever seen. Which one of those credentials is your favorite?
Oh, that is a really great question because it's tough.
There's a lot to pick.
There are, because there are events that are unique. I think that, the 150th British Open, that was at St. Andrews, the home of golf. That was very memorable and unique. Mm-hmm. There have been Ryder Cups that stick out to me as really unique. I think it's a really great question. I think it could be my first Super Bowl. It was Super Bowl 42, and I should preface this by saying that I do not like the Giants, but it was such a thing, right? It was Patriots were undefeated. Giants were there. It was in Arizona, which I have a personal connection to things that were happening in my personal life around that time. And it was my first Super Bowl, and I was down on the field, and I remember kickoff happened. And, I watched the ball, it lands, and I didn't even realize it at the time. So I had a brother working on the crew. He came by, and he hits my chin. My mouth was open. I was just standing there and he closes your mouth, act like you're supposed to be here, Yeah. And I was that just in the moment of is this real? Is this my life? Mm-hmm. It was that kind of thing. So I think that was my first really big show. And I was so stunned that literally my mouth is hanging open. So I think that was like a moment that I'll always remember. So that was a pretty special one. The only other things I would say was the national championship game in Indianapolis that we won an Emmy for. It was a really challenging show. Indianapolis, strange thing, it's cold in January. So like the stadium's indoors, everyone's great.
Yeah.
If you're working in TV, you're outside, and it was snowing. I remember that they wanted everything like flown between the trucks so it wouldn't freeze to the ground. So it was so physically like challenging just to be there for a few weeks that the payoff was it was a great game, it looked great, and then our technical team got the Emmy that year. So that was like, I think the national championship game in Indianapolis, I'm trying to think when that was, but that was probably the show that I was the most proud of.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
And you talk about Emmys, because perfect segue into my next question. Do you have a favorite one?
Yeah,
Wait, how many you got?
I have 3 now,
okay.
and I always, and again, the first thing is like if you have a sports Emmy, you know that you need to be part of like a big group. So I give all the credit to. I'm really fortunate that I work with great people. Mm-hmm. The first one was for the Olympics, and I'm not trying to take away from it, but it's a really big group and it's a really big show. So you almost kind of think that the odds are in your favor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to win, so that kind of thing. So the first one is awesome because it's the first time you're recognized.
Which Olympics was that?
2016 in Rio.
That's great.
Yeah, so that was my first. I'd been nominated, I think the first time was in like 2013, 2014. So it's just, I always tell people, 3-time winner. I'm actually a 7-time loser, so I've been nominated 10 times, but so I always tell people it's not like, hey, look at this. I can say, hey, there's 7 empty spots that I lost, so.
Hey, 3 for 10, that's Hall of Fame.
I'm in Canton, right? So it is, the second was for that national championship game that, that one I felt like we really, really earned.
What was the game? Who was the champ? Yeah.
Okay, it was Georgia and Alabama, I believe.
In the final?
In the CFP national championship game.
Is that like the Tua one?
No, it wasn't the Tua game. I was at that game, but this was, I believe Georgia won.
Oh,
Kirby Smart was going like bananas on the sideline. I remember because there was a pick six, and I remember the truck synced up a shot of the DB taking it back with a shot of Kirby Smart. They did side by side. I think Kirby was outrunning the DB. Like they had like a timer, and I think
I love that.
So I don't know who their opponent was. It could have been somebody else, but I thought it was Alabama and Georgia. So might need a research team in here. Where's the statistician? It's just an empty chair over there.
We're working on it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's a picture of you two, actually. Stats says? Okay. The last Emmy, I will say, I think I was most proud of. So when we won, I didn't know we won. So that was, it was for the NFL draft in Kansas City. So because of when it happens in April, that you have to submit last year's for the current year. So basically there's a group text of the people I work with, and somebody sent it out like this year, and it said, we won the Emmy for the draft. The draft this year was in Detroit. I didn't work the draft. I was actually working a different event. So I just wrote, congratulations, boys. And then somebody wrote back, congratulations, you. And I was like, what? And I had looked, and it was for the 2023 draft in Kansas City. And that was, again, it was just an awesome, awesome event. I mean, where they did it, how big of an undertaking it was, where they have the stage, where they have the red carpet. Mm-hmm. There was jibs everywhere, and just drones and cable cams, and it was such a massive. And Kansas City, great football city. Yeah. So that was probably my favorite one.
It's crazy how big the draft has got as a spectacle now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's great about being part of it now is I think the first one I did was in Nashville, and it was again, they have this basically a cable cam that was just running down their main street with all the bars, and they've really figured out how to make it like a sports fan's dream, Mm-hmm. So it's become, and it's 3 days, and what you don't see on TV is the in-between. someone selects, there's 10 minutes. They have a live band up there. They have, I mean, it's never a dull moment. It just goes and it's bang, bang. And then the second the pick comes in, the band kind of wraps up. They do the selection. But there's so many cool bells and whistles with that. Like, they were putting a camera in the mirror, so when people put on their hat.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the ideas, it's really great. It's like you get to do these really creative things that you don't see anywhere else. So it's like an award show on steroids, you know. It's 3 days. And Vegas was wild, too. People were just there, and they were like, what's going on here? And it was like, oh, yeah, there's a draft, you know? So Vegas was all over the place. And so it's become something to really actually, like a destination to go to.
Yeah.
Mm. Having been in the industry and done so many different things, is there anything that still surprises you when you see it?
You know, I do the Masters every year. Mm-hmm. It really is, it's something kind of like to behold. You go there every year, and it just kind of stays the way it is. It stays where they could make more money. They don't, you know, in that sense of they keep their egg salad sandwiches $1.50 and their pimento cheese. It's like, you know, parking is free, and you're thinking they have 40,000 people or something. You're like, if they charge $10 for parking, they could make this. If they charged actual like stadium prices for food, they could make this. But it stays frozen in time. It really is beautiful and pristine. So that one always does surprise me that, you know, they could go for more of a money grab, and where a lot of sports, right, they get you parking, they get you eating in the stadium, they've made it not really affordable for a certain group of people. And the Masters, if you win the lottery, you're there, and it's awesome. So that's one that I think still that it surprises me that it stays kind of frozen in time, and they've kept the integrity of the game, and they really treat their writers and media well there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just noticed your cup too.
So I purposely it says I have an Emmy, and Anthony Materiello and Camilla Gayer were the ones that got this for me. It was a Christmas gift when they were the GAs. Yeah. And I really had to look at it and go, are they making fun of me? You know, are they like sassing me? You know, it's just such a statement. So it's so funny. It never leaves the office, because I would never walk around with this cup. So I thought, oh, this is a really appropriate time. It's like literally been collecting dust. It's more of like a piece that I've just put in my office. Yeah. But I love it because only Anthony and Camilla could get away with, like, you know, I opened it up, and I think I opened it backwards. So I just go, oh, thanks for the cup. And they said, no, turn it around. And I was like, oh my God. You know, like, I'm like, did they think I'm that much of a, you know, that I'd run around and just, I have an Emmy.
That's funny. Well, I got to go back though a little bit, but like after SHU, like graduating, like what were your first couple of jobs, and like how did you get to where you're at? And you're also an entrepreneur yourself.
Yeah, great question. I think I'll try to make it as fast as possible. When I came here, I was always a fan of independent films. So I was like, I want to be the next Tarantino. I want to be cutting edge, and, you know, you think that you're just going to direct movies. Like, it's almost like you don't see the middle section there. So I came here, and you realize that everybody that was also in my department wanted to be Quentin Tarantino, or wanted to be, you know, Thomas Anderson, whomever. You know, it's like... It's one of those things that everybody had their director. If they wanted to be Spielberg, you know, there's a lot of people that wanted to be George Lucas. They wanted to do sci-fi all the way. So you realize that everybody kind of wants that. And I started thinking to myself, what I loved was actually editing. More than the shooting. The reps of shooting things started to feel a little stale to me. So I liked the editing. So right when I graduated, I created an LLC, and first I was super lucky. The first gig I got was technically with like a freelance job for Benihana. Okay. So it was just dumb luck. I nailed this interview. They needed something for a sushi chain they had just bought, and so I saw what was being offered to them. I said, I can do something twice as good for half that price. Dumb. You know, like I should have said I could do something twice as good for the same price. Yeah. So they were like, yeah, sure, great. So I got that, and it was one of those things that they said, okay, well, we need to, you know, send a check. What's your company or your LLC? And I didn't have one. so it was like scrambled. I ran down to the court in Bridgeport, did all the paperwork.
See, that's a key thing I was about to ask you, because like I think that just in general, like even if you're in the business department, they don't teach you to do that type of stuff.
No, yeah, like it really. Thank God, LegalZoom was like kind of new, but it was like articles of organization and and it was like, oh, I really have to, like, I got to register this thing. I got to get a federal tax ID number and everything. So, it's not necessarily difficult. It's just the process of figuring it out. So, I got. I got registered, and since I was 13, I'd been making movies, and I'd always been making these movies under the name Bruno St. Jerome Productions, and it's so dumb, and it's actually a reference to Ghostbusters. And so when they said, "What's your company name?" I just blurted that out. It's Bruno St. Jerome Productions LLC, and then it it follows you around. Then when you get to like 40 something, people are like, "Who's Bruno?" And you're like, I'm having, whatever. I'm not even gonna explain it. Yeah.
But it sounds official.
Yeah.
For I was a 25-year-old guy. It was it worked. So and through that, then I did a whole branding process with somebody, and I reopened the company under the name of Veritas Productions. So it was a great time, and I got to hire some of the best people from here. So Manny Santiago, like, one of the best dudes, best shooters, best editors I knew right out of college. We worked together, and and that's the thing, as an instructor, you find this sometimes. I mean, I'll see students that are more talented than me all the time. A guy like Mike Tully, like, he started doing handheld here, and then I watched him progress, and now I see what he does, and I'm like, I'm totally okay with saying, like, oh yeah, like, these guys have more talent at a certain thing. And I say that in a good way. I'm happy. Like, Manny is so talented that came a point that we were working together. I would just send him on shoots because his footage looked better than mine, and it's one of that, like, yeah, I'll manage, you shoot.
Yeah.
And then getting into sports itself, I did have help because I have some family members in the business, but you start with the worst job possible. Not the worst, but as a utility. Mm-hmm. So I think your two avenues on the way in, you could either be a PA if you want to go production side, or utility if you want to go into the actual, the more techie stuff. So carrying cables, running behind camera, whatever people ask you to do, just the dirtiest jobs. But once I got into live TV, I fell in love because it had the one thing that making movies didn't. You don't set a shot 17 times, right? And shoot it. Let's do the close-up. Let's do the reverse. It's like, this game is going to happen no matter what. At 1 o'clock, the ball gets kicked off. Mm-hmm. You can't stop it. Once that train goes, it cannot stop for the next 3.5 hours. Yeah. You're on. And so I was like, oh yeah, it got rid of what I hated about production, which was shooting the same thing over and over and over. It was just like, talk about adrenaline. The very first time I'm on a camera, right, all of a sudden I get a tally, red light goes off in my viewfinder. I almost passed out. I almost fell over, and I told a relative of mine. He goes, oh yeah, man, red light fever. I said, what's that? And he said, it's a common thing. The red light goes off, and all of a sudden it's, that adrenaline of thinking that your shot is what, 1 million people are watching on TV at that moment. There's something about it where you're like, oh, this is real. Yeah. And this is, I'm on a real broadcast, on a real network, and there's a lot of people watching. And so all of a sudden there's this weird, pressure, but that's what I fell in love with. So it was a combination of opening my own company and then starting to freelance in the live TV world, and then Dr. Miller said, you want to come back here and teach an editing class? And I was like, sure. And at the time, honestly, I just did it for some extra money. I never thought I'd fall in love with it the way I did.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
It's so funny because I remember when I took your class in undergrad, you would make us, we'd have to write out our shot list, and you'd be like, we had to do the little drawings in the boxes. And it's funny because now I still hate doing shot lists. And the two things, shot listing and running cable, or wrapping your cables. Coiling your cables. Those were the two things you used to always be like, in the old studio in Milady, you'd be like, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. And I never could pick it up to this day.
You can't over under. Oh man, we should get Riley to run in here with a cable. I'll teach you.
You were saying a microphone hates to see me coming. Cables actually hate to see me coming because they're like, he's gonna mess us up. But
it's great that you mentioned the shot sheets. Though I forgot. Like there would even if it was a 5-shot commercial, I remember like I wanted people to draw 2-shot. I wanted people to draw like a bust shot waist up. I wanted people to like, hey, you had an idea before you're in your viewfinder to see it happen.
It's so crazy because then, like for example, in my last role, when I was making documentaries, and I was making one thing, we'd have to create our shot list, send them out to freelancers. Sometimes I was remotely sending these out to these people, and I'm like, I gotta send this out and make this make as much sense, so that way when I get this footage back, I can make an entire documentary out of this. But it takes it back to all these things that you learn here at Sacred Heart, and it's like it's crazy because sometimes, like I never thought when I took my previous role, I started making shorter form digital content. And next thing I knew, I was making long-form documentaries for streaming. But again, if I didn't have the well-rounded kind of background from here, I would have been up the creek. You know, nice. It would have been over with.
Maybe I should bring it back for CM555. Make them draw some shot sheets.
Because my stick figure game got very good that semester. But you know, as you look at your career, you know, you've done a lot. Do you look at anything, you know, in the next, you know, 15, 20 years and say, I really want to do this in this next chapter?
It's interesting. It's a great question, too. I think the technology obviously is moving ahead so much. There's a lot of cool things that are happening, especially in football. You see a lot of VR graphics and AR graphics where they're using the sky cam and then overlaying some moving graphics. They do it at the draft all the time. You know, specialty cameras. So I think drones, jibs, steady cams. Anthony Materiello is giving us I hope that was a wave. I think the specialty cameras, I am more interested in, like, it's just, those are more interesting to me, and then how they're using jibs and steadies and then throwing graphics over them. That to me fascinates me, and what some of the SMT things that they're doing. So hockey now, I haven't done a bunch of it. Obviously, it's gotten big at this school, and we made a huge commitment with the arena. There's so many cool things you see in hockey that, you know, it's like, so that's, I'm trying to think, how can we incorporate, for me, I'm always trying to think, how can we do more things here on campus that bring in that technology? It's expensive now, but you know it's going to be less and less, and I want it here. You know, so that's why every season we try to add something. So it was started out as like a goalpost camera, and then it's a jib, and you know, today I'm just talking about with trying to get a drone for our SNY games, and the idea is I always want to push, because I love this place. I want to showcase like this campus as much as possible. I feel like we're such a secret in that sense, and it's kind of good we are, because I love my classes have like 12 students in them. I love that. Like I know everybody. You know, it's like you make that connection. But at the same time, I'm also like, this place is so great. Like, I wish more people knew. Like, it's one of those things, once you come here, you know, be here. So my future, I always want to push Sacred Heart. You know, I want to teach here until I can't teach anymore. And then professionally, I think I would love to get into some of those AR, VR graphics and, you know, those specialty cameras. Like, that's something that I want to learn more about, and I think there's enough people that I know in the industry that they'll kind of say, come check this out, you know. Fair. I want to know what's coming next.
Okay. Want to ask any advice you might have for students before we get into Paul's favorite segment?
Oh, there's another here. What I should do, I should send one message to somebody that is waiting for me. Okay. Well, I didn't, you know, this is good that time is flying, that I didn't
realize this.
Yeah. So, okay. So, advice?
Yeah, any advice you might have for a student.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be some of the same stuff that I always tell people, which is just, whatever you do, just do it well. Like, and that was the thing, was when you start, I think you feel like maybe you're not, you know, like, hey, I'm much smarter than this position, right? There's plenty of times that I'm holding a cable underneath a stadium and I go, I'm smarter than this, you know, but whatever you do, do it well. You know, just like that's the thing is, it's willingness. Like, anybody can teach anybody how to do something, but you can't teach work ethic, right? So that's that thing that I'm like, you know, obviously my family's important and all that, But when it comes to working, I go 100%. You know, it's I never want to fail because I wasn't putting in the time. So most of my advice to current students is I feel bad. Like you guys are running around with this like addictive thing in your pocket, right? And that's different than when and it's tough because these apps like lock you in. So I'm like, I try to tell them, have a life worth watching. Don't watch everyone else's life, right? Don't just sit there scrolling, oh, look at this person, he's there, look at this person, he's there. No, have a life worth watching, you know, and wherever that takes you. So I love that you guys create content. You know, it's like but I want to be a content creator. I don't want to be solely a consumer. You know, when you just giving away your time and your likes, before you know it, you look up 2 hours is gone. And it's like, what happened? You know, and so that's really, it's like, don't waste your time. I mentioned this in class last night. The only commodity worth anything is time. You know, I mean, money, there's always more to be made. There's, you know, cars, success, all that comes in time. But the years, it's the only thing worth anything. You know, you talk to anyone that's older, and if, you know, somebody said to me, what would you pay to be your age? I'd empty my bank account because I can always make more money. You know, it's one of those things, but time you can't get back. So I'm just like, remember, like, time is the most, you know, has the greatest value. So don't waste it on TikTok for 2 hours. You know, like, that's really where I'm trying to get people, like, don't let this phone suck you in and then take your most precious commodity of time away. Just, you know, use your time and the willingness. I tell people before interviews, because if someone says, hey, I'm all in, I'm willing to do, you know, I'll show up early, I'll stay late, I'll teach you how to do replay, I'll teach you how to operate a graphics machine. That's not important. You could be the greatest replay operator in the world, but if you're not all in, I don't want you on my team. You know, like, only people I want on my team are people that are all in.
Absolutely.
So
let's get last quick rapid fire fun shoe.
Oh man,
I'm just gonna give you one.
Okay.
So what's a sporting event that you haven't worked that you want to work?
Stanley Cup.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be. You know, I did F1 a few years ago, and that was the first. I mean, that was very new and different.
Yeah.
Stanley Cup. I feel like hockey is good. Playoff hockey is great. I feel like Stanley Cup, it is so insane how, like, at that point, every line change is important. Every single. And it's such a beautiful sport, and it's so physical, but also beautiful to watch what they do on skate. So I think Stanley Cup would be my one.
All right, but what about literally like a sport that you never covered, like a brand new like a.
Oh, okay, yeah, easy. Rugby sevens.
All right.
Yeah. And the Olympics in Rio, like, I didn't even know it existed.
Same.
And then you're like, oh, this is awesome. You know? Yeah. So.
All right, I like that.
That's exactly when I learned about it as well.
Yeah. Come on, I want more questions faster. No.
Well, Thorne, we want to thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
This has been a great episode of What You Doing. We will see you all next time.
All right, thanks, guys. Great to see you.
You too.
All right.